Hi there, my name is Judy. This is October. In September, Miss Susan was telling you stories and reading to you, and now it's my turn for October. And I put on my orange shirt that has pumpkins on it because usually our church is where the pumpkin patch is. This year we're not going to be able to do that, and I'm sure your parents and you all know why. We've got a virus that's making some people sick, and to keep everybody safe, we're going to have to wait to do our pumpkins next year, is what I'm hoping. But with my time today, I get to talk to you about a wonderful story that's found in the Bible. And I know that if you've been listening to Miss Susan, you've heard her talk about the Bible and what's in the Bible. It's a very good book that has lots of stories that Jesus told us and lots of stories that happened even before Jesus was born. Here's a beginner's Bible. There's lots of different kinds of Bibles. And the Bible that I'm going to be using today is my favorite Bible right now, and it looks like this. And it's got a story in it that Pastor Michelle will be telling you and your parents a little bit later, and that story comes from Matthew chapter 12, verses 22 through 37. But I found my favorite verse in there, and this is the verse that I want to talk to you about today. It says, "A tree is identified by its fruit. A tree from a select variety produces good fruit. Poor varieties don't." Now, this is a very interesting thing because Jesus was not a person who was teaching about trees a lot. In fact, in this story, he was referring to some people that weren't very nice, and he was saying that their fruit didn't match what it should have matched, because they should have been having nice words and compliments and deeds that were kind to people, and they weren't doing that. So Jesus was comparing them to a tree that has fruit. Now, I know that Miss Susan has been telling you to go outside, and I really like that. So you're going to have another assignment to go outside and look for trees and what their fruit is. When I look outside my window, I see a big old oak tree. Do you know what the fruit is on an oak tree? They're little acorns. And when they hit my roof, they sound like there's something going pop, pop, pop on my roof. And at first, I didn't know what that was. And I walked out there and I looked up, and guess what? I saw the acorns falling on my roof. I have another tree that is a pecan tree. Guess what that fruit is? Pecans, yes. And everybody loves to eat pecans, at least I do. Pecan pie is one of my favorites. So that fruit comes from that tree. I don't ever expect to see pecans on my oak tree. I also have an orange tree, and I don't expect to see pecans on my orange tree. Every tree is specific for a certain kind of fruit. And what Jesus was teaching in the story that he was telling these people about the tree is that their fruit needed to show people what it was like to be a Christian. In other words, he was saying Christians don't act rude and they don't act ugly. Their fruit is not like that. Their fruit is kindness and gentleness and all the fruits of the Spirit that we have talked about, not today, but we've talked about it in the past, and hopefully we'll talk about it again in the future. But I wanted you to be sure that you remembered that verse. A tree is identified by its fruit. Now, what kind of fruit do you want to have? Do you want to have fruit where people say, "Oh, that person is so sweet and so kind"? Or do we want people to say that our fruit or what we're doing isn't very sweet and isn't very kind? That's not what Jesus would love, would he? He would want to hear that we're as much like him as we can be. And that's what Michelle has been talking to us about, is being more perfect. And I have a little song that I want you to listen to. It's so cute. It's about being perfect. Let's see if you can hear this. So does that song tell you something? If we practice, we're going to get better until we can be perfect. So practicing being kind and being good is going to help us to get closer to being like Jesus, to being perfect. Wouldn't that be great? Now, this story about this tree and its fruit reminded me of another story about a tree, and it's one of my favorites. But it's not in Matthew. I had to go all the way to the book in the Bible called Luke. And the story that I love in Luke is about a sycamore tree. Now, a sycamore tree is not something that we see a lot in South Texas, but sycamore trees are big and they're beautiful trees. The man that is in this story is Jesus, but it's also another man named Zacchaeus. And I love to say that name. That Z is so much fun. Zacchaeus was a wee little man. And because I'm very short, and probably you're pretty short, shorter than your parents anyway, you know what it's like to be little, especially if you're trying to see over people that are in front of you. So Zacchaeus was having that same problem. His town was Jericho, and Jesus was coming to visit Jericho. And of course, Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus because Jesus was a wonderfully kind and generous person, and he could heal the sick and he could make people feel happy, and he was such a wonderful man that Zacchaeus, even though he was a tax collector for the Romans, which nobody liked tax collectors for the Romans, he wanted to see Jesus. So he found a sycamore tree, and he climbed up in that tree so he could see over the people and he could see Jesus. And Jesus came walking along, and Jesus stopped, and he looked up in the tree and he said, Zacchaeus. He knew his name. Wow, that was the number one surprise. He said, Zacchaeus, you come down, for I'm going to your house today. What an honor. What an honor for Zacchaeus. Do you think he came down from the tree? You bet he did. He came down very fast. And it says that he hurried to his house with great excitement and joy. But the crowds, when they saw this, they were so upset. It even says that they grumbled. Grumbled means, oh, I'm not very happy, I'm not very happy. And that's what they were saying about Jesus going to Zacchaeus' house. Zacchaeus did something very kind. When Jesus entered his house, he said, Sir, from now on, I will give half of my wealth to the poor, and if I find I have overcharged anyone on taxes, I will penalize myself by giving them back 4 times as much. Do you think that made Jesus happy? Yes, because Zacchaeus was being kind. He was a person, like the tree, that was showing that he had good fruit. He had kindness. He was showing that he could be honest and he could be generous. And those are all good things. So here we have a story about a little man in a tree. And what was his name? Zacchaeus. And what was the tree? Sycamore. And they teach us a lesson that Jesus notices, even if we're little. Jesus notices us, and he notices when we're kind and when we're generous and when the fruit of our tree is trying to be perfect. We have to practice that, though, don't we? I'm going to let you listen to a little bit more of the song, and I hope to see you next Sunday for another story, okay? Bye-bye.